What's up guys, it's Drac, and this is the Dart Zone Max Dictator. There were a few things that we wanted to do with this guy. Most of all, we wanted to paint it. So as long as we were painting it and making a couple of things for it, we wanted to do a mod guide for use. So to break this down, you have to start recognizing some of the very confusing design choices that have been made. Some of them make a ton of sense. Like this I'm fine with. Come in here, 2 screws, and the stock comes off. Now it's not really that the stock comes off so much as it's this part of the stock is going to come off, and it's got those on both sides, which makes a ton of sense if you plan on replacing this, which of course we're going to, but it makes way less sense if you're thinking about how the blaster goes together. That said, this part comes out, set that off to the side. That'll allow you to clamshell the blaster in a minute. The other thing that's going to have to come off in a similar fashion is this this neon orange piece up front. I think that for this paint job, I'm probably going to leave this cap on in its stock orange color, just because the orange coloration seems a lot safer. And then that's going to slide off same way. Now we've got a few more pieces that need to come off, and 2 of them are going to be very expected. We're all, as nerfers, we're used to popping the grip off and popping the priming grip off. The part that's a little confusing is that this is a multi-part tactical rail up top. The sort of pseudo-pick tinny that Dart Zone uses remains consistent over here. And then rather than be one long piece, I'm not sure if it was a molding decision or what was going on, this winds up being a 4-piece rail. So the rail comes off in 2 different butterflied halves. That one, and that one. So after you do that, you've got kind of the naked top rail up here. You can actually see some of the mechanisms and little cutaways in here. It's clear that no space is wasted. Now, the grip itself has a surprise inside. It's like your Saturday morning breakfast cereal, because when you pop this off, you get the same sort of Dart Zone faux tinny, pick tinny rail down there. Now, I know that sometimes it fits mil-spec stuff, sometimes it doesn't. That's because it's not perfect one-to-one of pick tinny. However, this is going to allow us, at least over at Foam Pro Shop, we're going to capture this. Instead of making something that you stick on and use as like a VFG or an AFG, we're going to maintain the shotgun grip. We're going to improve it overall, and we're going to use this as a captive piece to kind of lock onto. We did something very similar with the Striker, and nobody else really did that, which always confused me because it was far more secure, far more reliable, and in a lot of ways, kitting the priming action as in line with the prime itself as possible leads to a much smoother, more comfortable prime. But at that point, we're nitpicking. Let's go ahead and get this grip off. So I kind of like the original grip on this blaster, and it's a good thing too, because it would be very difficult to replace something that captured both ends of this, at least in terms of a sustainable and comfortable product. So we're not going to fool with that. Instead, we're going to leave that grip as is, and we're going to start dissecting the main body of the blaster now. It's interesting how small this gets once you take all of the stuff off of it. All right, so open, and the trigger is sticking around. We'll explain that in a second. Then we'll go ahead and flip this over, knock some of those screws out. So the trigger actually sits in between the 2 shells. It doesn't drop in necessarily, and part of that is because the safety in this case has these detents along with this plastic, creating a compliant mechanism that kind of goes in and out like that. And that gives you different levels of articulation, and that's how it locks into the trigger to stop the trigger from moving. We're going to replace this part, obviously, with something flat. But inside, you get to take a look at some interesting stuff. First of all, a lot of the internals are clear. I don't know why. It's just kind of interesting. You've got the multi-accepting mag thing, this one being much stiffer, I think, for the Dart Zone mags, and then this catch being a little bit softer for the Katana geometry variant. And then you have, I think this is the slam fire sled that connects to the trigger, and then that connects to the catch up here in the plunger, of course. You've got the mechanism by which it does sort of the dart flipping breech loading thing. And if you've never seen this in action, it's just so cool. And we've got our plunger over here, which appears to, and Dart Zone just must be on an oval kick. But you've got an ovular plunger tube here, except the oval is flat going this way, as opposed to in the pistols where it tends to be taller than it is wide. You've got the barrel over here, which realistically just sits in, and unfortunately, is not chamfered. So that's one of the modifications that we're going to do just to ensure more consistent chambering and firing. You could replace this with a longer barrel if you wanted to replace the spring with something more powerful. And we're not taking anything off the table, but that is interesting in and of itself. Of note, the barrel just kind of sits in here. And the thing that holds it in place is these two curved trays that kind of capture it. So there's a lot of captive parts in this system, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to take all of these components out, keeping in mind exactly where they were so that we can paint this thing up in a really sci-fi futuristic kind of way. Let's go. All right, guys, so we're inside the Dictator here, a phrase I never thought I'd say. We've got our paint job done. I've started putting some things back together, and this is going to serve kind of as a loose, rough assembly guide. With the full disclosure and the caveat that I don't remember how this goes back together. It took about a week to get this paint job the way that we wanted it to. Some parts are easy, but this is our jam door. Gone ahead and laid that back in there, trying to get as much grease in the system as possible for anything that's moving against itself, because obviously we used a lot of enamel paint. The rails are going to attach into one another, as are the handle pieces, the actual grip, not the foregrip, but the grip. Everything else, like obviously it's impossible to attach a skinny pusher because of the nature of this pusher being attached to the plunger, and the spring inside is already incredibly powerful, so we didn't want to mess with that too terribly much. I'm sure you could cut down, it looks like either a K25, maybe not a K26, and slip that in there, but you've got an ovular plunger tube, and it comes with pre-padding, and you know there's not much you're going to do about the dead space because that is the breech system. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and try and lay that back into position where it needs to be, although there's a couple of pieces that go underneath. It all kind of connects together, right? So you've got this aperture is going to go here, seat in with its 3 screws, and I think all that serves to do is establish a new internal framework and kind of capture the jam door. All right, so next I think we're going to lay the plunger and the breech system in here and then capture it with this screw that has a cap. That'll keep that in line. Next, I think we're going to come in and we're going to add our special breech. That's going to go in here. Have I already messed up? Does it go backwards? No way. Got to go in this way. Maybe I've got it in upside down, and it goes in like this, and that makes a lot more sense. See? Science. All right, so once you kind of have this assembled, you're going to set this into place. I think that this is captured by the other side of the shell. That's what keeps that in place. You can kind of get an idea of how this breech system works with the dart flipper coming out of that magazine. Now, the magazine obviously moves through this. This is the catch. The catch has a spring here. That spring is captive like this. So that's how that's going to hold in place there. This is going to come in like this. Make sure that your catch goes up, so this is the proper direction. It's unusual that it works that way, but it's catching up against this surface, not the bottom. And then kind of tease that whole system in there and sandwich it into the shell like so. At this point, you can take your barrel. I'm actually going to go in real quick and just as a modification, I'm going to add a chamfer to both sides of it to make sure that it chambers a little more cleanly. I do that with a deburring tool like this. You can do it with a lathe or a machining tool of some form or fashion. If you're going to do it this way, be extremely careful, not just with the tool itself, as it is very sharp, but also these shavings are going to be pretty spicy. All right, so now that we've established that chamfer on both edges, let's go ahead and set that in there. Deburring tool is available on Amazon. Someday I might carry these, but I don't. Speaking of things that we do have available, this is our first part in our kit that we're selling for the Dictator. This is just our simple, clean safety delete. It's got a nubbin on the side so that it fits flush in here, and then you don't have to worry about whether or not your safety is on. It's always off, and it's not going to interrupt the flow of the shell's aesthetic, like so. It goes in like that. So I knew I was missing something. These are the multi-magwell catches. What I did wrong here is I attached the connective piece for the mag release, which is of course ambi, and I forgot to capture them underneath it, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that, pull this off the top, and start snaking these into place where the magwell will capture both of them. And then this is going to go, I just had it here, and that's going to sit like that, and then we will reattach it. So as I was putting it back together, I was looking at this piece. I realized that I had our delete upside down. Once it's in correctly with the notch down here, it captures the trigger. The trigger's in, and then this piece is gonna kind of snake in like this and down and sit like this so that the trigger now has something to push against. And I believe this blaster has slam fire, and so it continues to have slam fire by virtue of engaging with this mechanism like so. The last piece of the puzzle is that this clear piece is supposed to be under this orange piece, because of course it is. And that's how the slam fire mechanism works. That's the mechanism by which it holds the system forward to make the trigger engage the catch. And it looks like through a little bit of a creative goofballing about, we have reestablished the internals. So with the internals back where we need them to be, you get our first glimpse at our paint job. Pretty sci-fi, pretty spicy. We're gonna capture that safety delete there. Capture that like so. Make sure that we get the rails in the proper area here and here. We can start buttoning those rails up by capturing them like this and like this. We'll do a quick function test of the shell as it's closed, and then we'll show you our remaining kit parts. All right, so as we button this up, we've gone ahead and make absolutely sure that you put both screws on both sides onto your Dictator, but I guess the first part that we want to talk about how we're replacing. So if you look at the original piece, it's about as flat as a smash burger, and it's polished, which means that it slides off of cloth shoulders easily. Now, also, I'm a little bit taller than the average foam flinger, so we went ahead and we designed this. This is an extension plate that goes on the top. It extends that. It also adds a nice concavity to it along with the knurling pattern. So this is gonna slide on like so. It does the same job of capturing the back end of the shell, and then you screw it in the exact same way using the hardware that you pulled off originally. And without getting too preachy about it, the question of like, why would you buy a Foam Pro Shop part versus something that's cheaper is like literally that they're cheaper. So we take a lot of thoughtfulness in our design. We use heat set inserts wherever possible to reinforce the design. That allows us to design for cleaner printing. I mean, that's pretty basic black PLA, but it looks absolutely flawless on the side. The heat set inserts go in, then you put metric hardware through the heat set inserts like that, leading to an incredibly strong part along that lines where the fit and finish is just perfect. There's a lot of, a lot of people designing for the hobby. There's a lot of 3D printed files out there where you can do effectively similar things pretty easily, but they might not have the same level of thoughtfulness and of course the same level of expense that comes with using, high-end filaments like Vertigo Gray, and then making absolutely certain to reinforce and use heat set inserts and hardware to make sure that you have something that truly accomplishes the goal while simultaneously being incredibly structurally durable. After all, we're putting things onto an ABS part. We want to make sure that the stuff we put on is just as nice as it is durable and will last the length of the mod. So effectively, this is our last part that I'm going to be showcasing in this kit, but stock grip, nothing wrong with it, perfectly fine. Horizontal pump grip. We wanted something that had a space for larger thumbs, so something that would extend up here, as well as just generally better knurling, better patterning, and then the ability to color match the back with the front. And so we came up with this, once again, using heat set inserts and metric hardware. But more than anything, a lot of people, when they see these, they replace them with, your generic pick stuff. And we sell a lot of grips that do that. But when we want to bring the action as in line with the barrel and the prime as possible to accommodate things like higher spring load, instead of using the pick rail, we just capture the entire pick rail. So this is a one-to-one mating. This is a proprietary part, and it kind of stinks designing proprietary parts because you have to make your design time back selling to this specific blaster. But by capturing it like so, we wind up with just a much cleaner solution for this, and I think that silhouette speaks for itself. The prime is something that you would have to feel, but you're more than welcome to sample one of these at an SCNC war or an end war near you. All right, so we're out here with the Dart Zone Max Dictator. There were a few things that I didn't cover while we were on the bench. I added our classic Fang sights. These come in a lot of our kits. They're just a very sharp sight picture, and they look really good, and they match the Vertigo Gray from the kit. This is our overall kind of enhancement, as well as we've completely retooled our scar design along with this kind of sheath. I really liked the hexagon muzzle brake that was on the Dictator originally, so we wanted to kind of continue that sort of chevron logo kind of rook crown piece sort of break thing onto the blaster itself. That's modular. Obviously, you can take this on or off and use just the scar. We'll probably be using that scar going forward. The way that the grip winds up mating into the blaster shell is excellent. It's almost like it was designed to have an extended thumb pad, and of course our grip is ambi. You could be either left-handed or right-handed and still have that extra purchase with our knurling. Overall, a much larger, much more, I guess, robust grip, as well as the stock gives for a much nicer kind of ergo experience. Now, as far as, you know, modifications go, we don't have the chronograph out because we don't need to have the chronograph out because it's not shooting any harder. If anything, it's dropped 2 or 3 FPS because the scar is tightening up our shots actually a terrific amount. It's pretty sharp how that's going. Other than that, I just really wanted an excuse to show off all of the Star Wars kind of paint job stuff we've been doing with the dry brushing and the masking fluid and a lot of the multi-parts. The Dictator and a lot of these Dark Zone shells recently have lended themselves very nicely to kind of this weathered effect where you take apart the pieces and then put them back together. The fact that the rail is a separate piece entirely means that it's really easy to get weathering, dichotomy, a lot of really sharp features on there. So, you know, as much a mod guide as it is an advertisement for this Foam Pro Shop kit, you'll be able to pick it all up in the description box down below, as much as it's also an internals guide for those of you that are looking up this video because, you know, you're trying to find out how to put this thing back together. The insides are relatively easy when they're together to understand, but when they're all pieces scattered on the workbench, not like any other blaster, they could be, you know, a little complicated. So thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this mod guide. I'd love it if you guys checked out our kit. Take a look over at the website. We also sell the kit over on Etsy. However, things will always be cheaper on foamproshop.com than they are on Etsy because Etsy is a terrible company with awful customer service for its sellers and its buyers, and their fees are insane, and they don't care about anybody, but they're an excellent advertising platform. So we've got our kits on there. We just bill the extra to the customer through there. So be a smart customer, shop on foamproshop.com, not Foam Pro Shop store on Etsy. However, if you find us through there, we're just as happy to send you the exact same parts at the same quality and fit and finish. Just know that the stuff will always be cheaper on our main website. Thank you guys very much for watching. Much love. Blast on Drac out.